Oh, there we go. Sorry about that. I already had to prep for the slide layout and a little prematurely. Anyway, glad you guys could make it. This is kind of it's not quite last minute because I did plan it a couple of days in advance, but it's something I've been thinking about for a few months now as we go through all these advice letters. Um, there's an overwhelming theme to them. The respect level, the respect part we're going to deal with in February with a webinar. But this has to do with women and their expectations of becoming a mother that are put on them and the devastation, both emotionally, physically, as well as financially, that women are struggling with. And overwhelmingly, when you talk to women, you asking, well, how did you decide that you were that you wanted to be a mother? And in most of the cases, the women didn't really think about if this is something that I want, is something that their husband wants, their parents want, because they want to be grandparents, that, all their friends are having babies, they feel left out. It's something that's been drilled into them since childhood, online, they feel bad because they meet men on the swipey things or whatever. And, if they don't want to be a mother or they have no interest in having children, they get rejected. There's women that want to be child free, but they can't even go and get themselves sterilized. The doctors, well, you might change your mind. So it's like everybody's telling you what to do with your womb, your time, your life, and your body. Now, like I said, most women don't really think about it. They don't analyze it until after they have the kids, and they say, "Oh, what the hell is this?" But by then it's too late. So what I wanted to do was kind of do an bit of an intervention and get you. And I'm not saying, no, I don't want anybody to interpret this as me saying that you should not have children. I'm not saying that. What I am saying though is when you talk to people about having kids, they don't ever tell you this part that we're going to talk about today. They only tell you about the good part. Oh, your little babies are so sweet. You're just going to fall in love. They're so cute. They're so adorable. It's so fulfilling. They tell you all that kind of stuff, right? Right? Am I lying? They tell you that, and then how it's wonderful, and God wants you to go forth and whatever it says in the Bible. I'm not a religious person, so don't quote me on that. But I do understand from talking to other people that there's some kind of verse in there about going forth and multiplying and being fruitful and repopulating the world. And so when you put all that together, no wonder it's so hard for women to decide they don't want children. They just get beat over the head with it. So we're going to talk about this today. Let me add this to the stage. Here we go. And I feel like, the correct terminology for this is that women are bullied into motherhood with half truths and whole lies. Like I said, they only tell you the part that they want to tell you. And a lot of times they're trying to pull you into that cesspool with them. They don't tell you all the stuff before you had a baby. Oh, no, 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 no. They want you to be in there caught in the cross with them. So let's move on and talk about this. Let's see. I printed my slides out because I don't know. I never know if I'm going to be able to see good because I keep forgetting my glasses. So I printed them out so I could have it in big writing. All right, so let's look at this slide number 2. Well, that's a good question. Hold on to that question, Yasmin, because after I finish my presentation, I'm going to be asking people for questions. So copy that if you want to so you can paste it in. It'll probably take about 20, 30 minutes for me to go through this, and then I'll open the floor up for you guys to, we can have some discussions um, and talk about your perspective. Hold on a second. I forgot to turn on one of my lights. No wonder it's so dark and gloomy in here. Okay. Yeah, let's do it that way. All right, so let's move on. So now keep in mind before we do this, except for the statistics I'm going to give you, this is all my personal opinion. Okay, this has nothing to do with any scientific study. It's all based on things that I've heard women say, things I've read online, things I've read in books magazine articles and forums and stuff like that. It's not like there's no research study that I'm quoting. I do like to use those sometimes, but this is not a study. This is just observation, good listening skills, and tying all the knots together. Okay, so look, how does this happen? How do women get fixated on becoming mothers, even if that's not something that was in their mind? Because a lot of women, they go through a whole bunch of changes, right, to try to get pregnant. They're spending like zillions of dollars on IVF, getting surgeries, doing all kind of stuff to try to get pregnant. And then it's like, why do you want a baby though? Where did that come from? And well, I've always wanted a kid, but why? I mean, that you weren't born with that thought, so where did that come from? So, women don't really think about that, but I feel like the majority of women have children, and we're talking worldwide, have children because of they've been intimidated into it, they've been bullied into it, or they've been extorted into it. Now, what do those terms mean? I've broken them all down to make it easier for us all to follow. And I want to make sure everybody's on the same page. So, what is intimidation? Let's define intimidation. And you can probably think of some examples which that you've run into either online or in your personal life where you feel like this has been directed towards you. It's a tactic used by men to coerce women into marriage and having children. It's defined as, quote, an act or course of conduct directed at a specific person to cause that person to fear or apprehend fear. That means anticipate, you know. Usually, an individual intimidates others by deterring or coercing them to take an action that they really do not want to take. This happens when doctors and politicians force women to have children they don't want to have, or for quote honor, or to marry under the guise of approval of some religious deity. It also happens when family guilt trips young women into having babies they are not prepared to raise simply because of their own pro life beliefs. This causes the young woman and the baby to suffer for years. Am I right? I know, people were telling me that there was some videos on TikTok. I didn't see them, or maybe it was Instagram. But anyway, it's somewhere of these girls with like 3 or 4 kids having like mental breakdowns and recording them and putting them on of, how their life is with children. They're like poverty stricken. They have no money, don't know how to feed the kids. They don't have any medical care for the kids. The kids look raggedy. The mothers are broken down and need mental health care. It is a disaster. And they have, 2 or 3 kids because people, they thought that that's what they're supposed to do. I can't kill my baby, that mentality. And so now here they are and they're stuck. And the intimidation. Oh, you saw them? See, I was trying to get somebody to send me a link, but nobody ever did. I didn't get to see them. I'm just telling what I heard. The other way that women are intimidated, and I know you've all heard this, is online when a woman is single. They start telling you, well, you don't even have a man. You just gonna end up old and single with living with cats. And they say that, and for some women, that's a way to intimidate them. They start feeling bad about not having a husband and children and whatever. And so they end up succumbing to this intimidation, feeling bad for not being what these guys say they should be. And so what it does though, it sets them up to be desperate. So the way, you guys gotta understand these games of people trying to mind fuck you. So they sit up there and they're saying this stuff to you. You're internalizing these kind of rejections and judgments. And so you in turn feel like, oh no, I gotta get a man, I have to have a man married, I have to have kids. And so you take anything that comes along. That's what they want you to do. These guys who are saying that are at the bottom of the pecking order. You don't ever hear the men of quality whining online about women not wanting them because they fighting the women off. It's the guys that women reject who are saying this kind of stuff. What they're trying to do is manipulate you into accepting them and with their nothingness because they don't want you to have standards. Instead, they want you to feel desperate to have a man, any man, so then they'll have a place in a woman's life. It's a game. It's a setup. Y'all got to understand. Let's move on. Okay, so that's intimidation. Now let's talk about bullying. Bullying is overt, unwanted, or repeated acts or gestures, including verbal or written communications or images transmitted in any manner, including digitally or electronically, Bullying is physical acts committed, aggression, or any other behaviors that are committed by a person or a group of persons against another. Their intention is to harass, ridicule, humiliate, intimidate, or harm the targeted persons and create an objectively hostile environment. It's basically you get threatened into doing what they want you to do. Now, if whether they put their hands on you or not, they threaten that they're gonna hurt you in some kind of way. So, a lot of women are very, thing afraid, and so they succumb to, again, this pressure. And now notice now the overwhelming theme in all of this conversation is somebody telling you what you should do with your body, your time in your life, your energy, your money, your dreams, everything. They're trying to coerce you into doing what they want you to do. Is that going to work for you? That's the only question I'm asking today. I want you to think about this. This is something that, like our mothers and grandmothers, they didn't have the option to think about it. They didn't get birth control pills until the 70s. Okay, so your grandmothers and great grandmothers and stuff, they didn't have these choices, the choices that you young women have today. So please think about this. Is this really what you want for yourself? And if you think about it, then I want you to have a real clear reason why you want it. Don't just go by because the Bible says or my mama says, my mama want a grandchild, all this kind of stuff. I want you to work. Is this going to work for you? And that's the only person that matters because you know what? In the bottom line, you're going to be the only one been playing mama to them kids. Yeah, I don't care if you're married or not. People get divorced. Husbands die. You know, stuff happens. And so you could very well end up raising your children by yourself. Are you prepared to do that? So let's move on. Now we're going to talk about extortion. Oh, what happened to my slide? That was interesting. According to Bachner and Associates, attorneys at law, they're out of Manhattan, big law firm. The overarching definition of extortion is to force or threaten someone in order to receive money or property from the person. Now, those are things of value, but what's also of value that's an intangible is a woman's time, energy, labor, use of her body to produce your heirs or whatever these men be talking about. So, but the other ones taking money or property, those are crimes. But because it's a tangible item. I mean, money can go in the bank, it got to go in your hand. Property, you can see it, you can touch it, you can load it up on your truck. A woman's heart, a woman's love, a woman's body, her woman's health, her mental health, her physical health, and all her energy and effort, that's not tangible. So to most men, it doesn't really have much value. But this is a way that women get extorted to give those intangibles to men, which depletes you. Okay, so let's move on. There's also something called verbal extortion, which involves the verbal or written installation of fear that something will happen to the victim if they do not comply with the extortionist's will. Another key distinction is that extortion always involves a verbal or written threat, whereas robbery may not. Okay, so you guys understand that we're talking about extortion, we're talking about bullying, and we're talking about intimidation. So you'll see those tactics at work as we go through the rest of these slides. Okay, you guys, I should have used a darker color. Okay, well, anyway, I'll read them to you so you'll know. Now let's talk about the rhetoric of motherhood versus the fucking reality. All right. The rhetoric is that motherhood is beautiful and it makes all women happy and you feel fulfilled. It's like the most joyful thing in your work. No, we're not going to have talk about no Jesus up in here. Patricia, just so you know, I'm an agnostic. I do not discuss religion on this channel. I respect everybody's choice. Trust me. I got people in here that's Muslim, Buddhist, Baptist, Catholic, Jehovah Witnesses, whatever. We all here together. But what we do not do is promote anybody's religion over anybody else's, any kind of religious belief over anybody else's. So what I do in order to respect everyone equally is we don't discuss them at all. So please don't ever do that again. Now, the reality is that some women don't enjoy being a mother and would not choose to do so a second time. That's why they only have one kid. Some don't particularly understand, relate to, or like their children at all. Some find the constant crying and screaming unbearably nerve-wracking. Some are overwhelmed at the responsibility and juggling required to raise a child. Taking them to get shots, the tutoring, the homework, the play dates, therapy appointments, soccer momming, all the stuff you have to do at the school. It's never ending. So even after you work a whole job and commute and stuff, then you got to come home and do all the work there. Then you got to do stuff outside of the home, and it still involves some kids. It's just unbelievable. It just never freaking ends. Some are shocked by how rude and selfish and downright unkind their children are. Some find the diaper changing, the constant mess that kids make, and their emotional and physical neediness to just be unbearable. How society dictates expectations of women. That all women are expected to be good mothers with a strong maternal instinct, that becoming a mother will be a fulfilling accomplishment for a woman. In the past, women never questioned these narratives and blindly went along with them. Society has been very judgmental and unkind to women who don't go along with that narrative. Mass media and Hollywood feed us the drivel that becoming a mother is a happy, joyful occasion, and that you're going to instantly bond with this baby the second that you see it, or preferably in utero before you've ever laid eyes on it. And that's something that they tell you is going to bring you all this happiness and joy. Instead, women are finding that they feel stuck, they feel trapped, they feel irritated, and they are bored. They are full of resentment, they're frustrated, they're angry, and they're unhappy. Women must deal with the guilt that they feel if they don't fit the social mold and don't particularly love their children and regret having them. That's why women have been so discouraged from talking about this issue that we're talking about today. That, it's not, motherhood ain't for everyone. It's not for everyone. The unfortunate thing is, though, that by the time most women find out that it's not for them, they've already had a kid or two. This is why I'm doing the show because I would like to avoid that. It's better for you and it's better for the children if everybody understands what their role is, their expectations, and you can figure out in advance if that's something that you want to do with yourself. I remember when I did Blog Talk Radio, I had a woman on who had written a book about becoming a wife. And, I mean, this was what, in the early 2000s, I guess, maybe mid 2000s. And she she had started this organization about being a wife and teaching other women how to be a wife, and that was a whole big deal. And the thing that really, I mean, I don't even know how many it was, what, 20 something years ago? I still remember this one sentence that she said: do not be a wife unless you are really to serve other people the rest of your life. That messed me up, as you can see, because I'm still thinking about it. And she's right, because what's considered to be a quote good wife, you're sacrificing for everybody in your household. A good wife to a husband, she's there, she's supportive, she's doing all stuff for him. Even a good girlfriend falls into that category. And then by the time you add a couple of kids and your, extended family and in-laws and stuff, you're at the center of taking care of all of these people and their mental and emotional, and for the husband, sexual needs. If you ain't ready to do all that, don't fucking get married. Don't do it. And I know these women be talking, saying, "Oh, I want to get married. It's my fantasy. It's like I want to be married. They don't have a big wedding. I want to do this and that." If you want to have a wedding, just have one. It don't mean you have to marry nobody. Get you a white fancy dress and invite everybody and hire a caterer and just do what you got to do. The one woman in Dallas did that. She married herself. I wasn't mad at her, but it's like, don't get married for a party, because you got to look at, okay, that's just the fun day. What happens after that? You're looking at a lifetime of servitude. And we'll explain more of that as we go through the rest of these slides. All right, so let's move on to the next one. What qualities do you need to be a good mother? Because I was thinking about it, right? I just gave my little speech about the servant people, but let's think about, if you're going to be a good mother, and some of these apply to being a good wife as well. What are some of the qualities that you should have? You should be selfless, willing to give to everyone pretty much but yourself. You should be patient. You should be responsible. Of course, you got to be responsible for the kid and the household and the money. You must be self-directed. You can't have somebody tell you what to do. You the one that's in the lead here. Hello. You should be kind and gentle because, really, I mean, little, especially the small children, I mean, yelling and screaming at them, that's not really going to get them anywhere. It's not going to teach them anything. You need to be loving and warm. Babies thrive on, touching, hugs, and warmth and stuff. You need to be temper free. You can't be flying off the handle and, you're a little mother and you can't do all that. You just have to talk to your children, especially when they're young. You need to be self confident. You cannot be a whiny, weak, and spineless woman trying to be somebody's mama. That is not going to work. You need to be able to have firm boundaries, establish boundaries, as well as maintain them, especially when it comes to protecting your children. You need to be substance abuse free. That means you can't be a drunk, you can't be a druggie, you can't be an addict of any sort. Your attention is supposed to be on your children, right? If you ain't ready to do all that, you ain't ready to stop partying, doing your thing, in and out of a variety of men's beds. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that. I'm just saying it's a lifestyle that is not conducive to being a good mother, right? We're talking about what qualities do you need to be a good mom. You must have some kind of self-control. Because if you don't have self-control, them the kids that end up in the hospital or the morgue because they got hurt because they mother or father flew off the handle and ended them. And you must be tactful and considerate. Because it's one thing you talk about your child, don't call them names. You tell them, I don't like that behavior, that kind of stuff. So those are things like I think a level of maturity that are required in order to be a good mother. If you don't have those traits, then these things up here on the screen, you ain't even met the MQs, not to mention all the special circumstances and extras. These are just the bare bone minimums. Okay. Let's move on. Now let's talk about, yeah, I was going to do these with some AI voices, but I know y'all hate that, so just have to read them. It's like, oh my God. But these are some quotes that I pulled from across the internet, articles, all kind of places. I just, one here, one there, one there, of women talking about their issues, what they really feel about being a mother. So this lady, she says, I can't help but feel like my parents and extended family resent me for not wanting children. I am constantly refused. I refuse to be heard, refuse to be believed, refuse to be trusted about my own life. What's confusing is that they all openly agree that raising children is hard. It's consuming. There's nothing about you anymore. They say all this without hesitation, and yet somehow they want this life for me. All I heard growing up was my mother talking about how difficult parenthood was. Now, suddenly, the story has changed. Now it's joy and love and purpose. What hurts most is that this pressure comes from people that I love, people I'm close to, people I'm on good terms with. And yet, when I tell them what I want, they don't believe me. I don't understand why they would wish this life on me. So you can see the resentment there that she got filled with, like I said, half truths and whole lies. Number two, everything I was has been stripped away, every single achievement, every hour I spent building myself, my energy, my joy, my body, gone. I wake up every day around 6 a.m. and immediately become a servant. Not a person, not a woman, a resource. I don't get a moment to orient myself as a human being. For the first 2 hours of every day, I exist only to give, give, give. I sleep 4 hours a night, broken into useless fragments. I've developed kidney stone from holding my urine because using the bathroom is simply a luxury. The simple act of peeing sets off both of my 10-month-old twins, so I wait and damage my own body in the process. Here's the part people don't like to hear. I never even wanted kids, but my husband did. He guilted me. He pressured me. He framed it as something that I owed him. And now here we are. He works 12-hour shifts 4 days a week, which conveniently means he gets a break from parenting. But I stay home all day, every day. No clock out, no relief, no applause. I gave up my career, travel, my abs, my nice tits and ass, my freedom, my sleep, my mental health, my physical health. For what exactly? Sleepless nights? Depression? A long, low grade misery I'm supposed to call fulfillment? Yes, I love my kids. They're cute, but cute is not worth everything that I listed above. You can't unpull a trigger. They're here because of me, and I've accepted that. What I'm still trying to accept is that my life ended at 25. Well, I had a good run. It was really fun. I just wish it had lasted a little longer. Yeah, they do. They follow you to the bathroom. But, it's a matter of training. You have to train kids. You have to teach the word. The number one word that I taught my daughter is privacy. So she don't. It's like if I go in here and I close the door, mommy needs privacy. And you can go in your room and close your door, and you need privacy. Like when you're changing clothes and using the bathroom, you get privacy. If I needed to do something and I didn't want her following me, I was put her ass in a high chair, and then she just is locked in there. And then I go do what I need to do, and then I come back. So, oh, honey, this is nothing. It gets worse. I have about 15 of these quotes from these women. I had to stop because it was just too much. And I got choked up because it's like these poor women, they sound so broken. So let's see what this one says. No one talks about how traumatizing kids are to parents. I always hear, oh, poor kids. Being a parent is traumatizing. You're expected to devote everything to a person who's not on the same team as you. Even when I try to help my son, he's 17, pursue his own interests and goals, I have to fight with him to get ready to actually show up for those activities. I fight to get meds that he needs to function. And I still have to go and put the medication in his mouth every day. He acknowledged that the meds make his life better, but the excuses are endless as to why he can't be responsible enough to take the pill himself. Mind you, I was raising him as a single parent when I was younger than he is now. Yes, I've tried letting him flounder, not giving him the pill. I've tried setting 1,000 alarms and reminders for him and fighting with him to set his own. I've talked to so many therapists, children, family, and personal therapists, and they all and tried all of their suggestions. I've had to try to talk through it with him. This is a medication he's been on for 4 or 5 years now, so it's not a new issue. And yet I'm the asshole for referring to him as inept, not to his face, of course. I'm told I could have done a better job raising him. It's like the whole world is generally so naive that they don't know some people are just shitty biologically. That's true. That's why I did that video about genes and picking who your baby daddy is. Not all bad actors in the world are tortured or traumatized. Some people naturally prey upon others and feed off others. He consistently goes out of his way to rage bait me as some sort of attempt at connecting, I think. He says awful things that are, quote, just jokes. I've been wasting my life devoting it to an ingrate who makes me miserable constantly since he was 15 years old. The trauma being heaped upon you, mom, is not your fault. Okay? Really? I didn't know that, Leandra. Well, thank you for telling me, so I will never, ever, ever click on any of them. How can I have 2 Oh, you know what? I understand what's going on now. They have this new feature where you stream vertically, like for, phones, and you stream horizontally for tablets and laptops and whatever else. And I think that's must be the problem. Okay, I'm gonna have to change that. I don't like that. I don't know why it has to do that. That's getting on my nerves. But that's what that is. So if you're on your phone and you want to be the vertical stream, then you would go on the other one. This is the horizontal one. Okay, let's move on to slide number 6. This lady says, my children are now 18, 16, 14, and 12. I am in a constant state of recovering their entire lives. I feel like I will never fully recover. I feel like I have spent so much time being overwhelmed and taking care of basic needs that I failed to teach them independence and how to live in the world as an adult. There was never any relief or recovery or replenishing because we live in a very isolated area. I didn't have friends or babysitters. Their father did nothing but add an extra person to care for. His needs always came first. Sex was a huge issue because I was constantly touched out and I never wanted it. He demanded it as his right. I'm still very floored by the fact that he did maybe 1%, and that's a generous 1%, of any care for these children, but demanded and got 50% custody in our divorce. Not having the children every other week has given me the opportunity to finally make friends and do things for myself, though. So there was a little bit of a sunshine about after her divorce. Yeah, I really haven't responded to any comments yet because I'm doing this. I'm going to get into you guys' questions and stuff after my presentation. So, what does this women say about motherhood? This is number 7. It makes sense that this is to some extent a class-based phenomenon because people in a more, quote, winning position will police each other to maintain their status. So I would take that to mean she's talking about people who are more high on the food chain, more highly educated, bougie for the black community, wealthy for the white community. They're gonna, according to her position, they're gonna police each other to maintain their status. I was raised in a two-parent upper middle class white family, and the pressure to marry and procreate felt like the only thing you do. Realizing that my first marriage and eventually motherhood was not for me, sharing that with my family felt like failing in the worst way. Like my life would be over and I'd be an outcast somehow. But a lot of that pressure was brought to bear by a parent who didn't have to think much about money and spent a lot of time thinking about image and reputation, aka a rich white lady. I guess that would be different than you struggling single minority mother. This is letter number 8. The physicality of pregnancy, infant, and toddler care was something I felt wholly unprepared for and is one of the main reasons we have just one kid. I didn't have a term for it. I just knew that after almost 3 years of feeling like my body wasn't my own anymore, I couldn't bear the thought of doing it all over again. I only stopped nursing when a medical emergency put me in the hospital and forced the abrupt end to our so called child led weaning. Reading in between the lines of matrilineal stories I've been told over many years, I believe I come from a long line of women who struggled with a great deal of shame over ambivalence at motherhood. Number 9, as a mid-30s woman, I made the conscious choice after a lot of research and consideration to not have children. The reality of what raising kids in America today feels like is part of what led me to my decision. It doesn't look like something I'd want to subject myself to. There are tons of resources today that can attest to that, not to mention watching friends who have children. One friend who was ambivalent about having kids and worried that it would do her career and identity, what it would do to her career and identity, said with hope. But my husband promised he'd be an equal partner in raising them. I looked at her like she was crazy and told her, he isn't even an equal partner in taking care of your dog. What makes you think he's going to contribute equally to a child? Oh, reality check. Letter number 10. My kid has been difficult and unhappy since the day she was born. She was a colicky baby who never slept through the night and cried all the time. Everyone kept telling me that as she got older, things would be better. Well, now she's 4.5 and things have not gotten better at all. She's still as clingy as ever. She whines and complains about everything and is miserable in general. Anytime I try to do something fun with her, she ruins it by whining or complaining or just not listening to me. I've lost friends because she refuses to share and is very mean to other children. I'm getting more and more depressed every day, and I've been put on antidepressant meds and I'm going to therapy. I'm to a point now where I don't even want to go anywhere with her and just stay at home all day long. Are y'all hearing this? Now, you figure if these women are brave enough to speak up, how many others are there? And like I said, I only went on sites and, pulled quotes from magazines or whatever, websites and stuff that I found. And I didn't look that long. I looked maybe no more than an hour. I'm sure I could have probably done like a whole show of nothing but letters from these women, these posts from these women. Let's move on. We got number 11. I don't think I got about 15 of them. This one is 2 pages. Okay. If you're undecided about having children, please go read the parenting subs and groups. Your real life friends and family, even the ones you admire and think would never steer you wrong, will still hand you that unicorn and rainbows version of parenthood. Folks will sell you a dream without ever mentioning the nightmares that come bundled with the box. But online, whoo-hoo, parents get tired. They stop fronting and they finally tell the truth. Read those posts. Every age, every stage. Even in mainstream parenting spaces, mothers are openly expressing regret and saying they hate their lives now, and that's not a fringe thing. That's exhaustion talking. That's the mental load talking. And most of these groups is mothers desperately problem solving while everyone else in the house floats by like they're on vacation. One post I saw recently was from a mom whose teenage daughter is pregnant, and now the daughter's boyfriend is moving in. And of course, the baby's coming too. Imagine being in the home stretch of raising your own kids and suddenly you're starting over with another teen and newborn in the house. These are real scenarios people are dealing with every day behind closed doors. When I was deciding whether to have children, it never crossed my mind to look online. I only talked to the moms I knew in real life. And of course, they praised it to the heavens. Nobody ever told me the truth. I was naive enough to think, well, it must be fulfilling if everyone says so. I wish someone had just told me. Go see what parents say when they aren't pretending. I'll be telling y'all. That's right. They need that 250,000. Oh, girl, please, you better, inflation done hit. You better up that to 500. Here's another one. I really do sometimes enjoy my son, but having him has tied me to an abuser for the next 14 and a half years. He still gets to abuse me. I can't move. I'm in a long distance relationship and I want to move in with him. I want to leave my state regardless. But since I have his kid, I can't. Coping? I'm ignoring the problem and hoping I don't come to resent my son. Well, see, girl, because I know some years ago they had the total what it costs to raise a kid from birth through college, and it was like 260,000 then, and that was probably about 7 years ago. So yeah, you need to double up on that, girl. You be broke trying to do these at today's dollars. This is really sad. This is why people have heard me say before, get a kid to the daddy. Don't fight for custody. He says he wants a custody. Sign that paperwork. Give him his kid. But so many women say, "Well, I can't do that. That's my child." You dumb. When the kid turns 18 and can get his own bus pass or whatever, then you can go back to being a mama. But all that drama and all stress and unnecessary strife, fighting with some clown about his kid that he wanted, don't do it. Just give him his kid. So here's another one. This lady says, I have two young adults, but mentally they're still 2 years old. They are autistic, developmentally delayed, and have mental disorders to boot. Oh, the trifecta of messed up. I regretted having them the second I found out that they wouldn't be able to care for themselves. I'm so scared for the day that I would have to put them in a home because the likelihood of being sexually abused goes up 7 times. They won't understand why they can't be at home, much less what's happening to them. We just stay home every day, each of us absorbed on the internet until we pass out. Then the next day starts again. If I could go back in time, I would have never had kids. One of us, none of us have any sort of life or friends. It's horrible. And this lady says, what made me regret it? Finding out that everything our society tells women about pregnancy, childbirth, and the challenges of raising kids is either an outright lie or totally glossed over so as not to discourage women from having children. I was shocked to find out how many people were also knowingly complicit. Doctors and nurses and older women around me, religious leaders and men. Shh, don't tell them. They might change their mind. Every step of the way has been and is difficult or had some heavy challenge associated with it. There are no full disclosures to potential parents, even though those same parents' experience and ability to adapt and cope will directly affect their child. When I reached out to others for advice, the typical advice was, welcome to my world. What? Really? You say you love me, but didn't actually warn me how much damage to my body and life this would take? Oh, that's normal, they say. Really? I've never seen that discussed honestly and in depth in any documentary, informational video, or women's magazine. At most, there's one tiny story surrounded by lots of messages about how great it will be. This whole game pisses me off to no end. Oh, I wasn't changing the slides, was I? I was leaving you guys out of it, but I was just reading away. Sorry about that. I forgot. Okay, this is where we are now. Now we're going to talk about some statistics. Those are all stories from women who actually had children and just, the trauma that they're doing. Like I said, most women aren't going to really talk about it because they're embarrassed. They feel guilty. They feel like there's something wrong with them, that they're wrong, that they're an anomaly. And so they keep quiet and they just hide their frustration in Prozac or a wine bottle. That's what they be doing. Okay. So let's talk about these stats. Maternal death rates. Now, in addition to the fact that you'll get stretch marks and there's all kinds of other issues that could happen physically where you'll live, you continue to live, you just have some new drama on your body. You might not even live through it. You all know Venus, what's her name? Not Venus, Venus is the young one. What's the older sister, the one that's married to the guy who founded Reddit, the tennis player? My mind went blank all of a sudden. But anyway, she almost died when she was having her baby. Famous black woman, all the money to pay for the best medical care. Oh, yeah, Serena, thank you. Why did I think of Venus? But anyway, yeah, Serena Williams. Um, said she had a whole story about, the traumas that she went through and how the doctors and nurses didn't live and listen to her when she was telling them she was, things weren't normal. And the girl almost died like twice. So do you think if that's her level, what of us little basic people gonna do? We just would have been croaked. That was it. So we talk about the infant mortality. I mean, I'm sorry, the maternal mortality, which means death rates of pregnant women or women who have just had a baby. Maternal mortality rates in the United States show stark racial disparities, with Black, non Hispanic women facing significantly higher risks, around 50 deaths per 100,000 births in 2023, as compared to white women, who are around 14.5, and Asian/Hispanic women generally having lower rates. Okay, so look at us. This is like 3 times as many Black women die in childbirth or shortly after than any other race in this country. Why y'all want to keep having babies for men that don't appreciate them, don't want the kids? Yeah, it is, Serena. Don't want the kids. They don't want you. What are you doing? My sisters, what the fuck are you doing? Okay. Okay, yeah, we'll talk about the physical damage that happens to your body in a minute. This is just the women who don't even make it to have the physical damage because they die. Okay. While those rates have dropped for most groups between 22 and 23, the rate for Black women slightly increased. We're in 2025 now, and this we're talking 2 years ago. This is supposed to be the most advanced country in the world. Why are women dying from childbirth? It's that rate should be zero or maybe one in 100,000 births. Okay, Black women slightly increased, widening the gap with Black women. See the part I put in bold there? Black women being over 3 times more likely to die from pregnancy related causes. Read that again. I understand that in New York, the rate is even higher than this. Like in New York, for some reason, the rate is not 50, it's probably like 100, it's like double in New York, the state of New York, for some reason, for Black women having babies. That ain't the spot. All right. So approximately 1 in 5, 20% of deaths occurred during pregnancy. Nearly one quarter, 23%, occurred during labor or within the first week postpartum, and more than half, 57%, occur 1 week to 1 year postpartum, underscoring the importance of access to healthcare beyond the period of pregnancy. Recent data shows that more than 8 out of 10, that's 87%, of those pregnancy related deaths are preventable. It is. But it's like, okay, but since we know that and we know the risks and we going in there by ourselves, why are we doing that? What's so important about birthing some more babies would put your life at risk like that? Maybe it's me. I'm too not trying to die having some clown's baby. I'm just not gonna do that. Okay, so now let me show you this. This is the maternal why can't I talk? Maternal mortality rate by country. Okay, world around the world. And here we go. I had did it to an Excel sheet, but it didn't show up good. The number one country with the highest rate of births per 100,000 live births is Nigeria, with almost 1,000. That's like 10%. All right. Then Chad, Sudan, but most of those, most how many of these countries are in Africa, on the continent of Africa. Okay, so y'all need to do better with your medical care. Okay, so we scroll on down. Let's go to uh and I do you see I'll put the link to this page in case you want to see it. Uh let me put it here. So that any of you who want to see this page yourself, that's the page that I'm on right now. Okay, there's Ghana 234, Ethiopia 195, Angola 183, Uganda 170. Okay, now here we go. Pakistan 155, Bolivia 146, Cambodia 137, Dominican Republic 124. So this is per 100,000 live births. In the Philippines, it's 84. India, there's 80. Korea, North Korea, 67. I don't know how they get accurate stats from North Korea, but whatever. Okay, Trinidad and Tobago, 54. Those are islands, you know. Vietnam is 48. Mongolia is 41. I'm trying to get down to where the European countries are. Okay, there's Egypt, 17, the US, 17, Bahrain, 17, China is 16, and let's see what Canada's only 12. That's better. Even Puerto Rico's only 11. So they're doing better, and the UK is 8. Saudi Arabia is 7. Switzerland is 5. South Korea is 4. Japan is 3. Iceland is 3. So these countries, look at these, Norway and Belarus. I'm not sure how you pronounce that. They only have 1 death per 100,000 live births. So they're doing something right. Yeah, they're doing something right when it comes to how they take care of their. Yeah, there is. But yeah, so I didn't want to filter it. I wanted to just scroll down and show you guys. So you guys, there's the link right there, and you can go in and look at it in whatever way uh that works for you. Okay. Now this little chart, it shows that these are from the 2018 to 2022 figures. The KFF is the Kaiser Family Foundation. So for the United States, in this period, 2018 to 2022, the number of deaths related pregnancy-related deaths were 4,295, and that's per maternal mortality rate per 100,000 live births. This is of all races, 23. Okay. I don't know if this is just at Kaiser. I don't know I didn't really see how they collected these. They didn't have any notations about how they collected this data. So we'll just say that is what it is. Okay. Now let's talk about the bodily harm. Now those are the women who didn't even make it to have bodily harm. They died. Okay. What kind of things happen to your body when you're pregnant and have a child? A lot of women are shocked because, again, people don't tell you about this part. It's very hush hush, very secret. A lot of people feel embarrassed and ashamed. They don't want to talk about it. I mean, it's pretty horrific. Okay, so childbirth causes significant physical changes and potential long-term damage to the body, most commonly affecting the pelvic floor, leading to urinary incontinence, bowel incontinence as well, or a prolapsed uterus. That's where part of the uterus, the cervix and stuff, hangs out of the body. It's pretty scary stuff. My mother was an RN, so I saw in her nursing books with pictures of all these things, and that's what let me know I would never want to go into healthcare. You can get a perineum tear where they have to like, you know, suture you back together or cauterize it so that it closes up the wound and seals it there when they put you on stool softeners because you can't risk reopening the tear. So you basically would have it's anyway, it's a nightmare. You get abdominal muscles tearing, which is diastasis. Diastasis resti is where your abdominal muscles, the vertical ones, the rectus abdominis muscles separate. So there's like, the muscle is one muscle, but it like splits in the middle. And so when I was a trainer, when I had women that had that, I would have to physically hold their two sides of their abdominal muscles together and have them do contractions to try to get those muscles strong again and without that opening up even more. So they would have like their intestines and stuff would be like, at the surface because there's no muscles there to protect them. It's scary stuff. It probably does because all the hormones. Okay, you could get a ruptured bladder alongside risks like hemorrhage, high blood pressure, and various infections, and long-term issues like postpartum depression and heart problems. All of this from having some fucking baby. Okay. These problems have an impact ranging from immediate recovery to lifelong consequences. The type of delivery, vaginal versus C section, use of forceps, and individual factors influence the severity and type of damage affecting a woman's physical and mental health. I just want to say something too. Let me interject. This is somewhat off topic, but it just reminds me of something. Okay. I like to read everything. So people have been telling me about this something called the Omega verse. And basically, it is a fantasy where I think it's somehow associated with the trans movement, where where the population is divided into different categories. There's the alphas, which are the leaders, the bosses, the rulers, the tough guys, the one that makes everybody do everything. They on the top. They like the pack leaders. Then there's omegas, which are basically, from what I was reading, they seem to have taken the place emotionally and as far as what they do and how they handle themselves, they've taken the place of women in relationships. And then they have the betas, which are, just kind of nondescript. And then there's this fourth category that's very rare called an enigma. Okay, but we're just talking about the alphas and the omegas right now in this omega verse. The omegas, they're in relationships with men. These are men in relationship with each other in these stories. And somehow the alpha can impregnate the omega, and then the omega can get pregnant. In these fantasy stories. Now, keep in mind, this is the omega verse storyline. This is it. These males who are the omegas can get pregnant by the alphas. So then they get pregnant and they have, the baby kicking, I mean, all the regular stuff. And then they get a C-section and then they had a baby. But the way that it was explained in one story is that once, they are mated, then they can develop the womb just like appears out of magic. And then that's where the baby develops. So suddenly they're a man with a womb. Now I was thinking about this. It's like, and then they can nurse the baby and the whole nine. I mean, it's just like this total male fantasy of not needing a woman to procreate. But people were mad about it. They were saying, well, how are they just gonna eradicate women? I'm like, oh no, no, no. This is a good thing. You don't understand. So then they don't need to bother you about it. And all these, maternal death rates and all this other stuff, you don't have to be bothered. They can go on over there and do whatever they want to do to each other and have kids up the yin yang. Nobody cares. I was not bothered in the least. But I just wanted to put that out there because this is like the hottest new thing. And you probably go on YouTube and type Omega Verse in and pull up a whole bunch of videos that would explain this a lot better than I can. And then you can watch some of them and see what I'm talking about. It's like, it's like this whole like little subculture society of this fantasy world where men can get pregnant. So anyway, back to my show. I just had to, you know, tell you about that. All right. So here we go. Let's move on to the next one. Touch aversion and other post baby emotions. Touched out is described online by women, primarily in heterosexual relationships, as a sensation of your skin crawling or wanting to rip one's skin off. Can I get an amen? I used to say that all the time. And these books and stuff are just coming out. My daughter's in her 30s. And I was saying that then that I was touched out. I didn't want nobody to touch me. Don't touch me. Like, you like jettison that baby, that man coming in the door, I jettison that baby to him like I was like on a football field or something, or boop. And then I just be don't touch. I just want to go. I just want to feel my body by myself. I don't want nobody ask me for nothing. Don't you lay a hand on me. Don't even stand too close to me. Even when I had my daughter, my mother was there because honey was on the plane trying to make it back because it was a little bit early. He was trying to make it back, and that baby came out and they tried to get that baby to me. I was like, "Oh no, don't get that baby to me. I've been holding her bitch ass for 9 months. I'm done. I give it to my mother." So my mother held her first. I didn't. Let my mother hold her for a good hour or so before I would, calm down and was ready to do it. I just needed to like regroup and feel my body by myself. I just was like, I just couldn't do it. I couldn't do it. And then, the nurses were looking at me like all kind of crazy. But I was like, no, I've been responsible, because it's a responsibility. You can't eat what you want to. You can't drink what you want to. You can't go where you want to go because you don't fit because your belly's all there. I mean, it's uncomfortable. You get tired. Your back hurts. Your leg hurts. Everything hurts. Walking is awkward, especially at the end because those muscles, your pelvis starts loosening up to deliver the baby. So you got that water walk because you're not stable. So I'm trying to walk along. It was one kid is plenty. Okay, one kid is enough. So anyway, let's go on back to this. Okay, and I'm talking about my feelings about it. Recalling my feelings about it when I first had my daughter, it was a feeling of being physically and emotionally overwhelmed. I just burned the fuck out on motherhood and nursing and diaper changes and being touched. You need space to have your body to yourself, to be alone, to think, to take a breath from the demands of the baby and others, husband, and their damn needs. For many women, there's a lot of resentment, anger, confusion, and sadness. There's self doubt and just plain guilt about experiencing these emotions as they battle the urge to run away from their relationship and their child or children. It just reminds me, like one time, somebody wrote to me and asked as an advice question, why would a mother, leave her children? And I was like, oh, let me tell you. All right, so now we're going to open the mic for you guys to ask your questions and have a interactive conversation. So let me pull this off. We'll go back to this. All right, why am I so over to the side here? Okay. So now I remember somebody had a question before, and I told her to hold on to it until now. But if anybody has a question, please type it in the chat. I'll put it across the screen here so everyone can see it. Oh, she said, did everyone hit the like button? That is a good question. Please do that. A lot of work went into this show. I like to do these social examination shows every now and again because sometimes I think we get so caught up on, focusing on the relationships with other people that, we lose track of our relationship with ourselves. And I always say, you can't have a good relationship with other people if you don't have a good one with yourself. So it's pretty much mandatory. It's a mandatory thing. Got to do that. Yeah, you can't drink. Alcohol is taboo because then your kid gets fetal alcohol syndrome. So, and you got to be careful even about what kind of drugs you take. Like taking certain antibiotics, I think it's erythromycin. It makes your child's teeth yellow permanently. I mean, no amount of bleaching and all stuff is going to change. It got like this brownish yellow from those antibiotics if you take them while you're pregnant. So there's a lot of things, you just can't do. You just can't do it. Deanna said she'd rather be dead. I'm going to scroll up here and see if I can find that girl's question. Mm, I'm scrolling. Mhm. That was a lot of chat I'm looking through here. I have to show this one. She says, I thought I wanted kids until I had the opportunity to have them. I was terrified and questioning my entire existence. That's funny. Ah. All right, I'm still scrolling. Okay, here's the question. This is what I was looking for. She says, I'm 25 and at an age where I feel like I should really start deciding on what I want to do about having kids. People always tell me that it's not fun having kids in your 30s. Is that true? Doesn't matter. It is more fun having kids in your 30s. You know why? Because you have some damn sense. You have some life experience. You have more patience. You have, you know, your career is more solidified. You have done some things. You've done some traveling. You know, a lot of the stuff that you got a lot of the wildness out. I mean, I hate to say it that because some people don't have that in them in the first place. But let's just say, if you do, the club and the traveling, the hanging out with your friends and going here and there, shopping, doing all this kind of stuff that single young girls, dating around, all that stuff like to do, you pretty much, kind of burnt out on that by the time you hit 30, 31. You're like, let's move on to something else. And so then you're more ready for this next phase of life that's more settled and more, homebody-ish. And I think that in the 30s is the best time for a woman to have a child. In the 20s, people changing too much. I mean, the teens is that's just ridiculous because you're still a baby. But, in your 20s, you're kind of trying to finish school and get yourself established. There's a lot of growth and development and changing that needs to happen in your 20s, and being saddled with the responsibility of a child and a family it's just too much. It's going to stifle that growth that you need to be able to do so that you arrive at 30, 31, 32, fully actualized, as we say, all the things that you wanted to do, you either have done them or they're in process, almost done. You finished school, you got your master's, you got your PhD or whatever, you got your career going, you might have bought a house on your own, not as a couple. You've done some trips, you've done some traveling, you might have, done some other things that you always wanted to do, open a business, whatever. Those kind of things are the milestones under which you put in your under your belt in your 20s and early 30s. That's the time when you start working for, looking at being somebody's mama so that you can have all those traits that I mentioned on the earlier slide. You're not going to necessarily have them um, when you're, in your 20s. It's just not going to. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. 33, 34 is perfect. Perfect age. Then when your kids in high school, you're in a good position mentally and you're calm, you can talk to the little brats. So yeah, let's see what she's got to say. She says, I work in CPS and was also a teacher for preschool. Seems like even kids with good parents have messed up kids. Then I could have a kid with disabilities. It's like rolling the dice. It is. It very much is. And my brother and I were talking about that today earlier. How when we were growing up, um, we're trying to figure out why are so many kids on the spectrum now? What is that? What is that? Where did that come from? Because we didn't have all that. And I told him I really do think it has to do with these new inoculations that they forced on everybody, because now we're in a second generation of all those shots. These are the parents that got those new shots having kids who are also getting those new shots. It's like when I was little, we didn't have the MMR shot. We just had measles. We had the mumps, and everybody had chicken pox. And if you was gonna get German measles, which is what rubella is, then you got that too. But then they come up with the shot, and then suddenly all these kids are having autism. They on a spectrum. They got ADHD. They got all this stuff going on. It's like all that stuff just like popped up out of magic. I'm serious. It was like nobody had that before then. In my whole school, not one kid had any of those afflictions. We had some kids with little Down syndrome and stuff like that, but all this other stuff, well, it didn't exist. So I think it has to do with that. There's something about that. So now those kids are having kids, and their kids will soon be having kids. So we're in like the third generation of those scientific experiments that they called inoculations. I just think it's just better to just for the people to, just have the disease. But that's just my opinion. Another thing, well, you do see some of them. They some of them, the ones in the Western countries, you do. Now, I don't think they have those. It's not in. I don't think they have the same inoculation mandates in their countries as they do once they come to the United States. But a lot of this too. I was telling my brother, a lot of this is prenatal nutrition. This is another responsibility of the pregnant mother. Your ass don't cook. Don't get pregnant. You can't have a viable pregnancy and maintain your health and the mental and physical development of your child, and your ass is eating Burger King, McDonald's, and Arby's and whatever else, you pizza and shit like that. You don't never cook no collard greens, baked yams, and some broccoli and some stuff like that. Your kid don't eat carrots and raisins. You don't, feed it any kind of intelligent kind of food. You give fried chicken from KFC and stuff like that. You don't bake just roasted chicken or roast a pot roast and stuff like that. You don't cook at home. You don't cook, and you think that's cute to say that, well, I don't know how to cook. And you think that that's something to brag about. You should be hiding your head. That is a basic foundation of adulthood to know how to prepare a fucking meal for yourself that's nutritious. And then you want to have a bunch of kids that you raise up on that garbage, giving the kids Coca-Cola in their bottles and a bunch of sugary drinks and stuff all the time. And then you wonder why everybody in your family is overweight and obese and got fucked up teeth and jacked up skin. You think? And if your mother ate like that, and then she had you, and you eat like that, and you have another kid, each generation of your family that eats like that and does not nourish their body, because your body is a vessel of which this little parasite motherfucker that's called a baby is growing. Whatever it doesn't get from the food that you eat is leaching from your bones and tissues. Protein, calcium, iron, whatever. It's going to get from your body. Now, if you're already depleted in those things, what do you think is going to happen to your body? By the time you hit 40, your health is going to be in the toilet. You're having all these kids and you're not eating right. And you don't feed the kids right. So they're already starting off at birth behind the eight ball, looking at, early on, what they call them chronic diseases and stuff. You have to know how to cook. These days, there's videos. You follow along on the videos. They didn't have all that when I was growing up. You had to learn from your grandmother or somebody else by watching them. You don't even have to do that these days. You can just put the video on your tablet or something, a TV in your kitchen, and follow along with them and prepare some nutritious meals. There's no excuse. But that prenatal nutrition, I think, is another factor that doctors and society, social, whatever these researchers are not looking at. They try to give these mothers a pill, but if the mother's not eating the balanced diet of proper amounts of calcium and iron and all this, vitamin B and C and D and all the stuff, and she's not eating those things, then her kid is not going to have those things in available to help it develop and to form and grow. So then if it doesn't have it, it's pulling it from her body. She's not putting anything in there. So she's going to end up depleted. Then by the time she has baby number two and number three, those kids, the intellectual level of those kids, their IQ and brain development is going to be less and less and less. So that's why usually, and you see the family where they have a lot of kids, the first kid or maybe the first and second kid are the smartest ones because the mother, was still healthy then. And the kids that she has after that, they just eating, absorbing scraps. And so they have a little low IQs. They in the special needs classes. They have all kind of physical ailments and, developmental delays and all that kind of stuff. It's prenatal nutrition. And nobody can tell me otherwise. It's just too important. Even nutrition as an adult, you suffer from stuff like high blood pressure, high cholesterol, and then end up with diabetes behind eating bad. So I don't understand why this isn't even talked about more. It's like when they do all this research, they talk about the result, but they don't talk about how to prevent it. What can women do to avoid that outcome? And I'm telling you, you have to learn how to cook. If you a mother and you got some teenage kids, and I'm not just saying the girls, the boys need to know how to cook too. They're gonna be fathers one day. Even if they're not, they're gonna be living by themselves. They need to know how to cook too. Get your kids in the kitchen. Teach them how to prepare a nutritious, balanced meal. Teach them how to shop, how to cook, how to prep vegetables. You know, um, it's more the cream does help to massage the tissues so that they're more flexible. So in a sense, yes, but it's still going to depend on what you want to do is if the baby's too big, it's better to get an episiotomy than it is to tear. That's all I'm gonna say. It's not as bad as it may sound. Some women opt to not do that at all and they should get a C-section. But to me, that sounds worse. I'm with you as learn as you go. She's 36 and child free. I refuse to put my body through unnecessary stress. It's harder in Christian circles. Yes, yeah. So I avoid telling the saints altogether. Good job. Very smart choice because they're going to be putting the pressure on you. Yeah, Leandra's it brought up an interesting topic. As women think to ask about a genetics test. You know, that really wasn't really much of an option until the 90s, really. And I already had my daughter by then, so and ain't trying wasn't trying to have no more, so I didn't really keep up with it. But that is true, and I think prenatal genetic testing is a good idea, especially if you come from a family or your husband, baby daddy, whoever, has people in his family with various ailments like learning disabilities, physical disabilities, or autism, they're on the spectrum of some sort or something, some kind of learning disability, whatever it is. If you see that in somebody's immediate family, then it would be a good idea to get some genetic testing to see if that's what's in your future. Some people might be able to handle it and they'll be all right. They'll be all right. They can handle it. But I told my husband if we have a kid that's got any kind of issues like that, it's going in a home. And he's like, "What?" He was horrified. He just couldn't believe it. But see, I know myself. It's like I mean, we're having this baby because you want one and you the only child and all this other stuff. And at that time, I believed it was my duty and obligation. I don't think like that anymore. But at that time, I did. So I was like, okay, well, we'll have a baby and whatever. But you understand, once the sucker pops out, that's your responsibility. And he stepped up. Up until the day he died, he stepped up and did what he needed to do. But I just let him know, because he wouldn't be able to handle it by himself, plus have to work and do. He had a business, he'd run his business and stuff. He wouldn't be able to handle it by himself, so he'd be depending on me, or he'd have to hire somebody. But my thing is, I already know I don't have that kind of patience. I don't have that kind of fortitude. I hate myself when I'm sick. So what in the world would I do with somebody who needed care like that 24/7? I couldn't do it. And so I told him, and he's like, "Well, that's horrible. I'm not going to tell my mother you said." I said, "You could tell her. I mean, one thing, I'd be fine with that." No, I don't regret it, but I tell you what, was never like, sometimes when you're in high school, right, college and stuff, girls get with meet a dude and they writing his name with their name with his last name, and they start making scrapbooks about wedding colors and dresses and baby names and all this kind of stuff. And I mean, maybe this is not every girl, but I had too many girls in my circle, my classes who were doing things like this. I never did that. I never any dream that I had for myself, it never involved being married, having a husband, or having kids. It just that was not my thing. And so I wouldn't say that it was a regret. I did learn a lot from it. Um, I didn't have the stresses and stripes that these women have. I did have that touched out experience though. I did not, don't touch me. Don't even stand too close to me. I don't want you breathing on me. Just leave me alone. I definitely went through that. But I think for the most part, I was okay with it. It was kinda like an experiment for me, just like when I talk about stuff on these shows. It was like just a thing that you do. It's like a life, the next step in life that you kind of expected to do. So in that at that time, I was in that mindset, and so I didn't really look at it as anything to be resentful of or regretful about. It was just, you grow up, you meet a man, you fall in love, you date him, you get married, you have a kid. I mean, that was a script at that time. And I think it still is a script for a lot of women. But I'm here to say, think about it a little bit more. Like if I had done what I'm advising you guys to do, I probably wouldn't have got married. I mean, I already had turned them down a couple of times, but because I really wasn't interested. I really wasn't, that wasn't my thing. I never thought about wanting to live that kind of lifestyle. And like, since him, I haven't remarried, if you notice. I just don't have the interest. Half the time I don't even be in a relationship because I don't feel like being bothered with nobody's problems except for my own. That's enough stress and trauma for me. And so it's the kind of thing, but I want you guys though, even though I didn't do it myself, and I admit if I had, it would probably be a different outcome. But I just want you guys to be very sure. Like I said at the top of the show, I'm not saying don't have children and don't get married. I'm saying make sure that that's your choice. Make sure that it's not a script that some other people, your church, your parents, your grandparents, you're responding to fresh pressure, peer pressure or something. Make sure it's your choice and that it's going to serve making those moves is going to serve your needs and match you up with your dreams and visions of who you want to be at the end of your life. So you think about it that way, you know. A Thanos snap, what's that? I don't even know what that is. I can't answer because you using lingo. I don't know what that means. Trying to make me sign a blank check. Nah, nah, nah. Why is it that my friends and classmates, I don't know the answer to that. Maybe were they more physically fit when they had the kids? Because as we get older, we tend to start not doing as much activities and exercises and stuff as we used to. So it could just be that they was in better physical condition when they had their kids and you guys in your 30s. It could be just something as simple as that. But whatever it is, it's nothing that some good Kegel exercises won't fix. So y'all get on that. Let me see. Let me scroll up here. Oh, so your mother, that means that somebody in your family was passing. We talked about that I don't know, a couple of months ago. I talked about that, why people who had black in their family line that were passing for white did not have children because of that fear that there would be that jump back gene and that kid would come out with, darker skin and kinky hair and the gig would be up. So, yeah, that's a common thing, in the 20s and 30s or 40s or whatever, when people would be coming up to the north from the south and passing for white so they could enjoy all those privileges and stuff that white people got that black people didn't. Oh, I don't know. I didn't see it. You don't have to don't dislike that you feel that way. That's the whole purpose of this show. I don't want you guys to feel guilty because you feel that way. I want you to accept yourself. Feeling guilty and bad about the choices that you make is what contributes to people having low self-esteem. Okay, we ain't about that life on this channel. We are about accepting ourselves for who and what we are and loving all of us. Okay, I mean, I could tell y'all some horrible things about me and some stuff I've done. I would never admit it publicly, but your friend over here was a pretty awful person for many years. But, it's those things that I experienced during that period of time, I own them. I don't try to hide from them. Like, I mean, I'm not going to put it on Front Street, but like people that was involved and stuff or people that knew me at that time, yeah, remember that time you did this? I was like, yeah, I know. So what? Why are you still bringing up that ancient history? So, let's move on. Look at the clock. Look at the calendar here. You still talking about that? I mean, but I don't deny that I did it. And that's part of having, incorporating everything about yourself and still loving yourself in spite of those things that, you probably would have made a different choice at some point in your life, but it is what it is. So don't be embarrassed about it and don't run from it. Well, here's a good question. What question I think should be observing from a man that would help me decide if I want him to father my children? First of all, you decide if you want children, period, first. Okay, so let's just assume that you've already done that exercise and you say, okay, I do want to reproduce my genes on this planet. Then you look for a man who's got good health, whose mind is right, who understands what responsibility is and accountability, a man who has a fucking sense of integrity. That means he does what he says he's going to do. He don't leave people hanging. He meets up with his obligations and stuff where he's in the fucking functioning as an adult. You don't have to take care of him and run behind him and remind him to do shit like a little kid. If he sees something that needs to be done, you don't have to tell him to do it. He's doing it already. That's the person that you want because he's gonna come in the house and see this the house needs to be cleaned up. You're exhausted from taking care of the baby all day and pass down on the couch. He's gonna get in there, roll up his sleeves, and start busting some suds, running the vacuum and putting toys away without you having to tell him like you're his mother. Okay. That is the kind of guy that you look for. How does he interact with people? Is he kind? Is he respectful? Even to people that he deems to be not on his level. Does he put people down and mock them and tease them and shame them? Or does he embrace and try to lift up everyone around him? That's a father because he's not going to try to do that to his kids, even when they fuck up. He's going to try to lift them up and say, well, son, you could have done this and that better, or, that wasn't you really made me ashamed or whatever, I felt bad because you did that, you weren't raised that way. He's going to talk to his kids. He's going to teach them through example and leadership. If you don't have them kind of qualities, he's dipping and dodging, he's running from responsibility. He got kids every goddamn where that he's not even taking care of. He can't keep a job. He on one substance or another. His idea of responsibility is playing video games all day and let somebody else do all the work. That ain't nobody you want to have a kid with. That is not someone who should be even in the remote running as somebody's father. Okay. And this is just, what's off the top of my head, but these are the examples I've seen of really good, you know, good examples of a father. They primarily lead by example. Their kids want to be like them because their father is that dude. He's the shit. He like everybody in the community likes him. He's active. He's smart and thoughtful and considerate. Those kind of things. He's not. Is he perfect? No, he be fucking up right and left, and you be getting in his butt about it too. But on the big things that count, he's right there for you and his kids. You can depend on him. That's the main thing. He's not flaky and stupid, making stupid decisions. Like pulling out this one girl talking about how her baby daddy fiance person was saving money. They was gonna buy a house. He's gonna pull $10,000 out the account because she was stupid. She didn't listen to me. I said you should set it up so you both of you have to sign for any kind of withdrawals, not just one. But no, she didn't listen. I trust him. I'm like, you stupid. And sure enough, he went and pulled $10,000 out and bought himself some rims mhm, for his car. That's when them spinner wheels, spinning things was popular. You driving and it's though he bought himself some of those for his car, and it cost like 9,000 something. And then I with the installation and everything, and he got new tires, and he spent more than $10,000. And she was devastated. And I just looked at her. Okay, is that somebody that you should marry or have children with? Absolutely not. Did she listen to me? Nope. What happened? 2 years later, she had a baby and he's still clowning with the money and stuff. She couldn't depend on him. They was always having some financial problems, bills not paid and stuff like that. And so she ended up getting a divorce. But had she listened to me, she would never married him in the first place. But but I love him though. But I love him though. And so there you go. Yeah, he's childish and selfish. Uh-huh. Yeah. That's what this lady said in one of the letters. They said, "Welcome to my world." They didn't say welcome to hell, but welcome to my world. Same thing. They try to trick you into being a parent, even though they know it's some bullshit. So, and it's even more difficult now. Like I said, my daughter's in her 30s. So society has changed so much since then. Kids could still play outside and stuff in those days. Now you don't see little kids playing outside anymore, like riding bikes up and down the street and skating and stuff like that, because these people are snatching kids off the street. You can't do that with your kids unless you like live in a cul-de-sac and you guys can like block the street off and all the neighbors' kids are there and all the parents out there watching them, that kind of stuff. Then you can do it. But in general, little kids, the society has changed so much. Children are like prey. And it's mostly, the people that you think you could trust, relatives, school teachers, tutors, and all that kind of stuff, neighbors that you let come in and out your house. You can't let nobody around your kids these days. And so to me, that's like so exhausting to do, to have to mention, to have to live that way. It's just it's too tiring, too much. So anyway, this is a list of resources. I'm going to copy this list off the slide and put it in the show description on YouTube. These are the sites where you can go and read some of these, the letters that I read off. These are some of the places where you can see similar sentiments expressed by the mothers about, how they feel about having children. It's like, wow. So yeah, I will copy that off, and like I said, look for it. If you want to look for it, it'll be in the show description on YouTube, but not till after the show, of course. All right. So she says, my sisters are single moms. Got recruited into the family, being the family baby daddy. I know if it were to have a kid single, the grace would not be extended to me. Well, yep, that's kind of sad, but yeah, I would back up from that. You could unrecruit unrecruit yourself. That's a bit much. That's a bit much. I don't know if I'd want that responsibility. It's a bit much. But anyway, I really enjoyed having this conversation with you guys. Uh, we will be back on Sunday. Be back on Sunday at 3:30 p.m. and for the regular advice live stream. These kind of discussion shows are different. Don't have them all the time, but um, when I do, I try to come up and bring you something for you to go away and think about. All right. So that's it for today. Hope you guys enjoyed your Christmas. I cooked at my house. I didn't want to go anywhere, but and so we have just so much food. It's just ridiculous. I don't know what I was thinking about. I've made enough food for 5 people, and it's just two of us. Anyway, you guys, thanks for coming in and spending the day after Christmas with me. I will see you on Sunday. We get ready to roll into 2026.